And you're back for another episode of the Finnish Football Show. I'm Mark Wiltshire, and I'm going to do my best to introduce all of us with our correct names and correct websites today. So I'm from Explore Finland radio show. Today, I'm also joined by Mark from FC Suomi. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
And also to Rich from Escape to Suomi.
Hello.
Hi, Rich. So we did it. I got through the introductions without stumbling too much. Rich, let's keep with tradition and tell everybody you had a poll on Twitter this week for what shirt you'd be wearing today. Which shirt are you wearing?
I'm wearing a Yiiko shirt. They won the Ykkönen division, and I know Keke, who's a contributor, is a fan of theirs and like the fact that because my wife's from Kuopio and I'm wearing a Yiiko shirt, there's a bit of the old glory hunter in there. But yeah, this one won the poll quite convincingly. But I'm running out of shirts, so exchange rate and all that. I'm skint. So if any clubs would like their shirts publicised, then I'm a medium and I'm all ears. So let me know.
Shameless scrounging on the Finnish Football Show.
Hang on. I think we have to address the fact that this is a combined and shared medium, and Rich gets a lot of free shirts already. So if there are any clubs,
I like shirts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Me and Mark, we're good for shirts.
Yeah. Feel free. The postage is probably cheaper.
If Giorgio Armani FC feels like sending a few shirts my way, I'm very happy to accept them.
I'll take Primark.
So this episode, as with the last couple, is being broadcast live on YouTube. So if you're out there watching us live, thank you very much for joining us. And if you are watching live, there's a message bar at the side of the screen. You can make some messages. It says there's 9 people watching now. So I'm just going to ask you, where are you watching? And if you can be bothered to reply, it'd be nice to hear from you. Yeah, I've done that live. Let's see if anyone replies. I'll keep an eye on that. This is a very active period for the Finnish Football Show. It's our 3rd episode in the past 4 weeks because it's been busy. The Finnish Football Show seems to be getting a bit like London buses. You wait ages for the next one and then 3 of them come at once. And I guess after this, things are going to go a little bit quieter because it's the end of the Veikkausliiga season, which is why we're convened here again today. And there's only one more international game before winter comes and it all gets a bit dark and cold around here anyway. So that's the focus of this episode, is to look back at the denouement of the Veikkausliiga season. And we want your input. So as I say, live viewers, give us your messages on the screen there. If you don't want to do that, you can get in touch with us on Twitter using the hashtag FFS11, and maybe Rich, you can keep an eye on that, see if anyone gets in touch on there.
Yep.
And similar with those listening on the podcast, find us on social media. Our handles on Twitter are at FC Suomi, at Escape to Suomi, and at Explore Finland. So we'll try and get the podcast out in a few days. It takes a little bit of time to download and edit and get it all up there, but we're doing this in our spare time, and some of us don't have very much spare time, so bear with us. Before we crack on with the news, Rich, as ever, no noisy biscuits and no F-bombs, if you don't mind.
Well, I've got no biscuits today anyway, so I can promise that.
1 out of 2 is not bad, I guess. So how about we head over to the news section and see what's got Mark upset. Within the last 5 minutes, there's bound to be something new coming along. Mark, you told me your news story was going to be about Otto Fredriksson. Is it still about Otto Fredriksson?
Well, you have to mention Otto Fredriksson because he's 34. He's had a very long career, and he's taken Koningsvinger from the Norwegian First Division to the Norwegian Cup final, where they'll play incumbent Norwegian champions Rosenborg. He's been there for like 2 or 3 years, and they started off in the division in the 2nd division in Norway, which is the 3rd tier. But that's actually, and he's done incredibly well. I think he wears the armband relatively frequently, and he came back from injury. I think it was 2 years ago. He was out for about 2.5 years with a cruciate ligament. So he's done really well to sort of build himself back up and get himself regularly playing, and also make a name for himself in Norway. But that's not my news article. That's just that's just a good shout out. I'm sorry, but this morning, the Finland squad for Ukraine was announced, and because Roman Yeremenko and Niklas Moisander are both suspended for the upcoming game against Ukraine. I mean, technically, Yeremenko could be eligible if. So, if the inquest goes well and his name gets cleared. But anyway, that created 2 spaces in the Huuhkajia squad, and they've been filled by Roope Riski, who was drafted in late last time, like in the last squad, and Simon Scrab, who plays in Gelfe. So that's 2 young, quick forwards that have been brought into the squad, which is still, I mean, relatively heavy on defenders, even though I think they claim there's only 7, but I think they're fiddling the books to hide defenders in other departments. Yeah, so it was a bit of an interesting move because it's kind of out of character. There's a bit more of a balance to the squad now because there's essentially 5 forwards sort of called up, which is good to see for the Huuhkajia.
It's great if more than one of them gets on the pitch at any one time.
That will be, I mean, that's the big test. That's where the rubber will hit the road. But I mean, at least they're 2 players that have both got a lot of pace and they're relatively tricky on the ball. So it was refreshing to see. I was ready to sort of hammer back it once more, but I can't argue with the selection.
Yeah, they're in good form as well. So it's nice to see that he's actually seems to be keeping tabs on these things.
Yeah, and I mean, it's Veikkausliiga Golden Boot. So him and Granlund, at least, it's not much, but they are representing the Veikkausliiga for the national team. So that's a step in the right direction. I think also as well, I have to mention that if anybody wants to go to YouTube, you have to go and check out Miedz Lejnica, which is where Petteri Forsell plays. He scored his 10th goal of the season last weekend, and it's just lovely. He looks really quick and really fit.
Yeah, Mark, can you not suggest that people tune into other YouTube channels when they are supposed to be concentrating on ours?
After this one,
they can look at it afterwards.
When you listen to the pod.
Yeah. As you listen to the pod, if you want some, background visuals, the kids are all about that these days.
If you want some entertainment while you're listening to the show, find them on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah.
This could be the moment that the band starts to break up.
Yeah, and I joined Polish football production. Yeah. The Polish football show is taken off, I can tell you.
Rich, save us, for goodness sake.
Oh, right. Well, it's a bit late, but it being the end of the domestic season now, needless to say, the Swarman Cup for next year is already in full swing. It started long before this year's actually finished. And there's a new format, which we've touched on in the past. It is ridiculous. It's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. However, we are at the group stage of the cup draw.
For those who don't know it, Rich, just explain what that format is and how it works.
Well, in the past, it was just an open draw. There was some seedings in terms of where the bigger teams come in, but essentially it was an open draw. This time round, we've had the smallest, a quarter of the entries for this year's competition than there were 10 years ago. Only 92 teams entered compared to 360 10 years ago. They had 70 teams enter sort of over the first few rounds, essentially preliminary rounds, which gave 4 qualifiers. So there's a very Champions League sort of vibe going on.
That's 70 out of the 92?
So of the 92, the 92 teams entered, including the big clubs, so including Veikkausliiga, who haven't played up till now. But the rest of the clubs, they had to play all the way down to the final 4 who get to play in the group stage with the big teams. And it doesn't end there either, because you've got 5 groups of 6. Each team plays each other once, so you have 5 games. The group winners go through to the quarterfinals, so that's 5 teams. And then the runners-up and the best third-place team play each. There's a draw for that. They go into another round, and the winners of those matches, the 3 teams, then go into the quarterfinals. I have absolutely no idea how they came up with this.
I would.
It sounds like something that Gianni Infantino might come up with when he was coming up with new formats for the World Cup. It seems to be making it complicated as possible.
I would traipse through the Palolito and find the guy that made that proposal to make that change and tell him that he is no longer needed, because that is a hell of a lot of work to cause a hell of a lot of pain.
It was probably Bacca, to be fair. But essentially, you've got, and this cup competition has now meant the end of Liga Cup as well, which was the Veikkausliiga's pre-season tournament, essentially. That's not going to happen anymore because this cup essentially replaces that. But I don't quite know how you've lost 75% of the teams from 10 years ago, and by essentially saying that those teams get 4 spots in a group stage with a possibility of playing some Veikkausliiga teams over in, potentially January, February. So you're looking indoors as well. It's crazy. I know they had to do something, but this really isn't it at all.
Those early rounds of the Suomen Cup are like, they're the sort of, for everybody that's played like 4th, 5th division and below, they're the great leveler. They're the ones where you get to play against, guys who made it and guys who made themselves a career, and that in itself is a massive incentive. So I've played a couple of times in those rounds, and universally, if you get to somewhere like Kolmostivare even or higher, you get whomped like 12-0, and it's a really tough day, but you kind of get to see sort of how far away you are. And there are teams there are giant killings, and there are great stories from it. So I can understand why most teams wouldn't get into that format, because you don't want to play the teams that you play every week in the league. There's kind of no point to that.
Yeah, and it's a shame.
Somebody on the message board said that plan probably sounded better in the Palolito sauna after a couple of beers, and I was thinking it sounded like something that have been drafted on Johannes Midsummer at sort of 1 o'clock in the morning.
It's like something from Austin Powers. They, rather than just go through the thing, they have this convoluted scheme of we'll make it as complicated as possible and give you the best chance to understand it by making it so long. But by the time the final plays, it would have been going on for over a year.
We mentioned that on the last show. We mentioned that the Palolito left a little bit took the reins off and let go of the Veikkausliiga and let them self-manage, and it's become, for whatever reason, a lot more entertaining in the Veikkausliiga. And now at the Suomen Cup, they've decided to reorganize it, and it's literally killed another competition. I'm gonna have to calm myself down now, because I'm gonna go. It just
this was
really
meant to be my rant.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. But it's just. I don't. The thing is, I don't have personally that many years left to play terrible football, and I just, I'm gonna have to check now if we're okay. Yeah.
Let me stop you both there. I think everyone gets the message. We've got a few comments here on the message board. So firstly, John, who says, "Moi, hello from Brazil." So we've got somebody there watching in Brazil. We've got 12 people watching us live now, and at least two of them have liked it. So at least 2 of you are having a good time. Juspe15 has made the comment about the sauna, and Sampo says, and this is for you, Rich and Mark, your thoughts on Nistan and Honka's promotions to Ykkönen.
I will cover that later. I've got it written down.
Okay, there we go. We'll come on to that. Well, my news isn't really news, but I just wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to friend of the show, Mehmet Hettemay, who announced with a beautiful photo on Facebook this week that he just got engaged to the lovely Vilma. So congratulations to Mehmet and Vilma from FFS. Yeah, and the other 2 are waving and giving thumbs up signs, which works brilliantly in audio.
Don't be a stranger, Mehmet. Yeah.
Always welcome.
Yeah.
Again.
Okay. Yeah. Always welcome again. Exactly. And how about then we now head over and talk about the finale of the Veikkausliiga season?
Well, it was fantastic. it's strange because normally Finnish football gets a lot of publicity worldwide for ridiculous things. We're probably to blame for some of that. But Mariehamn, as we did kind of hope, actually ended up winning. The final day, Hoiko and Asiko drew, which essentially made their win, irrelevant to a point. But they scored in 51 seconds at home to Ilves, and basically the match was a party. A third of the population of Mariehamn was at the ground. And they said there were 4,000 inside. There were probably more as well, they've admitted, but they couldn't count. And the fact that it's gone, it's such a great story. They were the best team over the year. They were certainly the most settled. They had the best defence. Some of the players are locals as well, which makes it a bit better because you think coming from Holland Islands, it's a novel thing in itself. But the fact that there are, there's a big community vibe to it. There is a lot of foreign imports, but they all seem to blend quite well into the setup of the club. It all seems to be very close knit. And, like last year, we have to sort of say there is an element of the other clubs dropping the ball. Hoiko were, through injuries and other mismanagement, dreadful at times. Asiko seemed to take a while to get running. They had lost their first win, which would have made things interesting. I know they had another crack at appealing that. But really, it's great to see the Ilves and VPS as well did, outperformed. Everyone expected Ilves to really struggle. VPS were poor last year for 2/3 of the year. And it was just fantastic. And, to see everyone, you don't often get a neutral's favourite, overcoming and winning, and everyone bar the fans of those two other clubs, and even then some of them wouldn't begrudge them.
I think that's fantastic. True. I think that's true, and it was good also to hear. I heard an interview with the captain of the Mariehamn team on BBC 5 Live Football Daily podcast, and I believe they were also featured on World Football Show on the BBC as well. So, and it's good. It's not my team, but it is our league that we talk about here. So it's great to see these other teams getting some publicity and getting some exposure for Finnish football as well.
Yeah, and I think it shows as well. I mean, like there's been the good. One of the good news is that there's been lots and lots of interviews. I think one of the ones I saw was the Scottish keeper, the Scottish reserve keeper they brought in on loan, Smith. I think he's. I mean, drinking stories aside, I think what he basically said was that Mariehamn were the best kind of team. They were well bonded. They worked hard for each other. They were incredibly well prepared and well organized, and they're pretty much exactly. In a way, exactly the opposite of both Asiko and Hoiko. So Hoiko, as a team, basically they were a set of individuals that generally didn't act as a unit enough. And for Asiko, the whole start of the season with Lossa coming in and the registration fiasco and all the other stuff, their preparation was just a million miles away from where it should have been for a defending champion. So it's just really nice to see a team that really does work hard and work for each other get the benefits.
I think that Richard's point before was about Mariehamn having a good defence, and they needed that defence. It's probably what won it for them because they didn't score so many goals throughout the whole season. And I think conversely, it's Asiko's lack of defence for the first half of the season that probably contributed to them not getting there. Because as soon as they signed sort of the 3 defenders in August, everything got much tighter and much better for Asiko as well. I just wanted to also, while we are talking about Mariehamn, just to say a bit of a shout out to Johan, who uses the Twitter hashtag handle @leadclimber, who I hope you're now got enough love for Mariehamn. He was a bit upset that we didn't show them enough respect way back in FFS 9. So I hope we've made amends.
And it was Johan who somewhat, I say successfully, at the start of the season for Ule's prediction league, predicted correctly numbers 1, 2, and 3 in the table. He predicted Maraham would win.
So he wins a big prize.
Well, I don't actually know what the prize was he got for that. He didn't win the actual competition because of the rest of the. But I did ask him if he'd put money on it, and he said no. He'd had too much wine, which is a shame.
So we have big respect for Mariaham, but no respect for Johan.
Hang on, and did he have too much wine between the prediction and the bet, or before the prediction?
I think he maybe lost the confidence to follow through, unless. I mean, he certainly did well though, and he got a good shout out on their website anyway. But yeah, it's one of those things. It's like I'm sure plenty of people who wish or predicted Leicester would win the English League last year and didn't actually get round to the bookies around the corner.
Well, well done, Johan.
Yeah,
And at the start of next season, Johan, give us your tips, and I'll have a fight.
Yeah, I'll be down.
So what else went on that you guys noticed in those last 3 games? Let's see. Maybe in a minute we can go through the final placings and just have a talk about some of the teams in general and where they finished, and also look at our predictions. But anything particular that occurred to you in those last few games?
PK 35 won.
Oh, amazing! It was the first win in 20, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable to keep Shefki in the mire for a bit longer. I thought, I mean, it was one of those things. I kind of didn't like to see it because it was when I saw that I was at the Hoyiko STK game, so I didn't see the Vanta game. But it was when I saw the highlights, they were nice traditional dirty goals, which which I always get a nice pleasure for seeing. And it was quite funny that the one, like, your only win in 20 games was against your former manager. So I thought that
at least for every game that PK35 won, Shefki was in one of the dugouts at least. So,
yeah, that's true. When he left, they only beat Inter. That's crazy.
But and I mean that leads on to something later on. You know, obviously, had Inter won, they wouldn't have had to play in the playoff, and everyone assumed that, you know, me included, oh, that's a banker win. You know, Vanta, who hadn't won in 20, and, you know, I think they'd lost their previous 8 or 9 games, and they only had 10 points for the season, and yet they turn over, you know, the team managed by their former manager, and it was their star striker who left as well, obviously manager's brother, and you know, a lot of the players, and I know there was a lot of people, you know, on Twitter, a lot of the coaching staff or current and former of Vanta who seem to take a lot of pleasure in that.
Yeah, one of my I have a friend who works somewhere close to Vanta, to the club, and I asked him what the game was like, and in fairness, Turku dominated it, and he said it was the closest thing to a rugby match that you'll get like in the Veikkausliiga. It was just pushing and shoving for the last 30-40 minutes. So it was a real classic. Yeah, but I mean, actually as well, if you think about it, if Inter win, Shefki avoids the drop, and Mourinen got a new contract with Hifki, and they didn't they didn't do anything spectacular in a 0-0 draw away at, was it Rops? So it's really fine margins, because they'd have been in it. Like, if they'd have got something else, if Shefki or if Inter had got something, Niaji had got something, then it's a really fine margin. But now everybody's loading Mourinen and the return of Hifki and how they're going to dominate next year.
Yes.
I think from my point of view as well, we sat here kind of previewing the final 3 rounds of games, and it all came thick and fast over about 9 days, and we were saying that, you know, any one of those top 4 teams could win it, because at the time I think Asiko was sitting in 4th place, and nobody won all of their games, but both Seinäjoki and Hoyiko drew 2 and won 1. And I think if you're going into 3 important games and only picking up 5 points, that's where you drop back. And Mariehamn picked up 2 extra points than both of those in the final 3 games, and deservedly took the lead by 3 points.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it was all academic, because Mariehamn won in their last home game. But I have to say that the Hoyiko Asiko game was incredibly disappointing because it was really tense. It was really turgid. There was very few chances, and it was just you like we couldn't sort of believe that this was two teams going for the title allegedly, because there wasn't really any cut and thrust or any impetus or pace. You know what I mean? It was just a really strange atmosphere. All the fans were up for it again, and there was a bit of trouble again. But on the pitch, there was everybody seemed to be kind of like trying to keep things calm and keep it cool, and then wait, and then probably nick a 1-0, which is a really odd way to go about winning the title.
It's interesting, Mark, actually, because when Lahti came to Seinäjoki, they scored a couple of good goals. One was an excellent goal from distance that went into the top corner, and they were a good team. I was impressed by the way they played. They had two fellas at centre back, and I couldn't see their names. I've got a bit of a problem with my eye, so I'm not much of a match summariser or reporter. But they kind of snuffed out. They kind of snuffed out everything that came their way, bar the two goals. They looked really solid. Their captain was just all over the place in a positive way. And again, apologies to the Lahti players that are all tuning in their droves. I don't remember your names, but I did notice you, and I was quite impressed that Seinäjoki just stuck to their game and played football and tried to find a way through with some good passing and created loads. That game could have finished 5-5 and nobody would have complained. And I thought that's what they tried to do again against Helsinki: try and play it patient and try and find a way through, and that maybe the two teams pretty much just nullified each other.
They did, yeah, and that's the disappointing part, because I mean you would kind of hope that sort of the tactical side of the game would go out the window when you're 30 minutes from the end of the season. You know what I mean? Because they kept playing and they kept knocking it about. It was pretty football, and it's clever. I mean, the thing is, I think Esiko are like one or two. They're maybe only one player away in the middle of the pitch from being champions next year. But when it got towards when the clock started ticking down, they didn't speed up. They didn't apply more pressure. They didn't look for any direct attack or direct play. So it was, I don't know. It was just a really strange sort of subdued affair at least from the stands. I mean, it could be that I was in with the Hoyiko lot, so they didn't have a lot. They didn't have a lot to shout about, but yeah.
And looking at the table, let's just talk through a little bit at the top there. So Mariehamn won the league with 61 points, three points clear of Hoyiko on 58, and then Asiko on 57. 4 points behind them were VPS on 53, and then in fifth place Ilves on 52. It was a shame to see, for me, for two reasons. One, VPS crept into the Europa League spot, and being Seinäjoki's kind of local rivals, that's never good to see. But also Ilves just dropped out on the final couple of games, and that would have been a bit of a fairy story to up there with Mariehamn to see a club the size of Ilves get into the Europa League.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously from probably a bigger club in terms of fan base, and certainly in where they're from in Tampere. But they were challenging in the top three for a large part of the season, and I'll be honest, I thought they'd struggle at the start of the season. But they had some good players who off the radar. The Tenden came in; he had the most assists. He was named midfielder of the year. It was almost an unknown quality. They had Soisalo, the young winger, who I saw him play sort of a couple of times, and he was just so direct but quick, and he was a good finisher. He looked a bit like Mark Overmars, but 3 foot taller. but and Jarkko Viss came in, and he's been around a while now, and he came in after last season when Armstrong kept them up, and he built on that. He brought through some of the younger players. You know, and you can see that club is, I know they've hit a bit of a stumble with the stadium, but, you know, coming fifth when most people would have put them in the bottom two is, I mean, it's a great achievement. And even that penultimate game against Hoyikor, when they went 1-0 up, I think people were thinking, oh my God, this might happen. And I think they just ran out of steam a little bit. And, you know, from Hoyikor's point of view, it was a bit of experience and a bit of quality that got them over that line. But I mean, fair play. I mean, if Mariehamn had won, that would have been fantastic.
While we're still at the top end of the table, there's a comment online from Salmari, and he says, first of all, he's finally found our live recording, so that's great news. We've got 13 of you on there now, so welcome, Salmari.
We keep moving it because, you know, just to avoid viewers or listeners.
We're being
That's
trapped.
right. He got too popular on Blab, so we got them to shut that down so that we could become a bit more niche.
Did we do it on Vine as well at one point?
Yeah,
No, not quite.
it's up I think we should go there.
And I'm going to blow a bit of smoke up our own backsides here. He says, you guys are doing a great job and have brought our league closer to some of his foreign friends. So thanks, Salmari.
Thank you.
But then he has a bit of a complaint that we are too anti-Hoyikor. And I don't think we are. But I don't know that we're anti them. But I also wonder if it's because they've set such high standards over previous years, and the last 2 years perhaps haven't hit those standards. And Mark, this is for you. You have a soft spot.
Yeah. I don't have a. I mean, Hoyikor should be. They're the club that should be basically winning the league every year. And I mean, that's not. It's kind of not realistic to assume. But when you look at the way that the teams like Asiko and Mariehamn have put themselves together, you just think it's quite simple. You know what I mean? And with Hoyikor, I think that my overriding feeling is that they've tried far too often to overcomplicate things. They've gone after sponsorship deals when they haven't been winning games on the pitch. They've gone after commercial agreements when they were at a launch. They had half their team out for a launch of FIFA 17. The day, was it 2 days? I think it was the day after.
Before the Mariehamn game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the day before the Mariehamn game.
Yeah.
And you think, like, I understand when FIFA come knocking, you know, it's a great event. It's, you know, it's going to get a lot of crowd, like a lot of buzz, and they do really well on things like social media. But you've got to win the game. You know what I mean? You've got to focus on the pitch and on the players. That, and I think they're also the club. They're the 31st best youth development club in the world, apparently, and so they're the club that most people in Finland, with an eye on either the national team or the Veikkausliiga, look to develop young talent to get it shipped abroad, to get them used to game time, to get them used to playing well and scoring goals or defending well or whatever, and then shipping them out. And it's maybe unfair that Hoyikor carry that burden because of history, but they haven't been able to carry it in the last couple of years. And I think I don't want to berate Hoyikor too much. But there's on Twitter doing the rounds at the minute. There's a league table of where your team would finish with only Finnish players, and I think Hoyikor finished something in the region of 10th. Is it
11th?
Yeah, 11th. So when you take out foreigners and their influence on goals and assists, Hoyikor finish, you know, like at the opposite end of the table. And for me, that's just a bit of somebody's lost the way somewhere, because they've got Club 04 and they've got every kid in the country knocking the door down to come and play for them. So with all of the money they have in the bank, the youth talent they have available, the structure that they have as a club, they should be doing a lot better, and they're not. So I give them a hard time for those reasons.
Salmon, I'll be very happy if Asiko become as successful as Hoyikor and people start to resent us for that. Okay, that's a burden I'm prepared to take off your shoulders.
Yeah. Apart from that, lovely club.
Thanks for the comments. I think that we got another question from Samp, but we'll come on to that, Samp, in a little while. So let's perhaps travel a little bit further down the Veikkausliiga, and what do we have in the middle? It was much as it was in our sort of last show about Veikkausliiga. Rops on 50 points, and then Kups on 49, and then a bit of a gap down to Lahti in 8th with 42 points, and they were all they're all comfortably safe in those last few games.
So Cook has got a new manager as well. Yanni Honkavara, who was at Hifki. He's taken over for next season. I think Rayamaki had done okay, but nothing, and
it's a bit of a risky move, though.
It is, and it's weird because obviously the rumours knocking around about a month ago that he was lined up for Asiko's assistant and next manager, but he's gone to Kups, who again seem to be a club who, they're sitting very comfortably mid-table, but they have a very high turnover of players. They've lost Pennanen as well, who's gone to Petri Forsell's club in Poland.
Yeah,
I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name. But he did a good job in getting Hifki up, and was he fairly removed from the job? I don't know. And results picked up a little bit, but he's gone in at Cups, and it's I can't see them challenging particularly next season or doing any different from how they did this year. I think they had a very average season. They're an average side. They did better than I thought. They did tail off a bit, but it's much of a muchness for them, really.
And then we get to the interesting bottom end of the table. So Kemi, 9th place on 35 points, then Hifki on 34 points in 10th. 11 were Inter on 32, and right at the bottom were Vanta on 13, with those 3 points that we talked about before that they'd picked up. What about this and TPS playoff?
Well, it was something they reintroduced a couple of years ago. Was the runners-up in Ukkonen would play the second from bottom in Veikkausliiga, and I think from about a month previous, people were starting to look at the Turku derby as a possibility. TPS obviously finished runners-up, a point behind Jiko in Ukkonen, and it was quite spicy because it's the derby that we hadn't seen for a couple of years. They're sort of very different clubs in terms of background and history, and the Inter have been a bit more successful in recent years. But
just tell a little bit more about that, Rich, about the background and the history.
Well, TPS, it sounds a bit, I'm sure I'll get criticised for this, but TPS are the club of Turku. They're the established club, have been and were very, very successful. They've won titles, they won cups, but in the last few years it hadn't been quite so much. They went for a phase of being third, fourth, but they got relegated 2 years ago. And Inter were formed in 1990. The owner, Hakans, who weirdly won the Captain's Ball prize last year for contributions to Finnish football, he essentially bought a Turku-based club and built it in his own image. He built it in the style of Inter Milan, which is why they wear blue and black. He's a very rich man. He put a lot of money in, and it's not quite the Wimbledon, Milton Keynes, Dons thing, but there is an element that Inter Turku are the new kid on the block, and they won the title in 2008, and this is the first year they've really struggled. They were runners up a couple of seasons ago, but there's definitely a rivalry there, and the fact that you got a two-legged game with so much riding on it was very interesting as well.
Yeah, I think so. Part of me thinks as well that's why. So this season, Shefki rocking up to try and take on Inter Turku was always a little bit of a tricky sell, because he did what he usually does, which is that he brings in his own people. But next year, both Inter and Shefki need basically a win together, because Shefki's gone through a lot of jobs in the last couple of years where he's done okay for the position that he's been in. So he kept Honka up. He got PK35 promoted. he's kept Inter up this time round, all while kind of struggling and managing sort of infighting and a lot of other issues. In Inter, by the same token, they set up the thing with the Dutch clubs to become kind of like they took a lot of players on loan and they fed off a couple of players the other way that never really materialized into anything. And they were sort of, before this season, were kind of hanging around 4th, 5th every year, not really developing or growing, and then not really doing anything in terms of not really declining, but also not particularly challenging anywhere. So both Inter and Shefki next year will be a good match for each other, because they both need to make something happen for themselves.
Do you think Shefki will be at Inter next year? Because Samp has asked the question, where do you think he'll be next year?
I think he'll be there at the start of the season.
He'll get for keeping them up. He'll get. I mean, the problem he's got, that what he does is he goes around and finds his friends and people that he can rely on to build the core of a team. And what that essentially does is always unsettle the players who are already at the club, because you can't win games consistently with like 4 or 5 players. And a little bit, he needs to figure out how to manage that. And if he's got a whole preseason, theoretically, he should be able to do that. Because even when he got promoted with PK35, he took a team of unfashionable players and made them work hard and fight. And then when they got promoted, he still brought in his own a group of his own players to try and sort of like up the quality, which then unsettled the balance in the squad. I mean, there was probably other issues and other problems. So if he can get the squad to be harmonious, then it'll be fine. But if he just looks to replace people if they don't do the thing that he wants to do, then it'll only end in tears.
It's funny because he seems to invest himself, and in some cases money as well, in the clubs he's at. It's almost like he's trying so much to become part of that club, or for the club to be in his image, that it was partly the case with Honka and certainly with Vanta. He almost became the club, and I know it sounds awful, but he put money into Vanta, and it made a big thing about him and Cunhago, becoming shareholders, and that was one of the sticking points of when he left, and there was a delay in him taking over at Inter. But he spent a lot of the summer touting himself around for English League 1, League 2 jobs. He was apparently quite close to Oldham. And Port Vale, and it's strange because he was at so many English clubs, and particularly, I interviewed him a couple of years ago, and he spoke so lovingly about Ipswich. And I mentioned something on Twitter at the weekend, and all the Ipswich fans, we love him at Ipswich, which, again, you're sort of rivaling the intensity, the passion side of management, but what does he bring with that? If he gets a good crack at Inter and is allowed to do something, without the constraints that he had at Honka or at Vanta, then who knows? He's still, in a way, an unknown quality.
Yeah, so I think as well, the investment part, I don't like going into the other side, but for Honka, he needed to put money in because the club was going insolvent, and if he didn't, they would have folded before the end of the season, and he wouldn't have been given the chance to keep him up, and it was his first kind of like thing. So he did that. And then for PK35, they just didn't have. I mean, when Shefki and his entourage left PK35, it was incredibly apparent the quality was not there in the squad. So I don't want to justify it because I don't really agree with that kind of approach, but I could see why he wants to do absolutely anything it takes to win. And I would hope if Inter can sort of stabilize and they've got a decent war chest next year, not like crazy money, but if they have enough to bring in somebody of proper quality that the team can rally around, then I think we might get to see Shefki manage in a sort of positive environment, because we've not really, in every place he's been so far, he's been firefighting.
Very much so.
Why don't we lighten the mood a bit? Why don't we look back at what we thought at the start of the season? This is the first season of the Finnish football show, and at the start of the season, we made some predictions, didn't we, Rich?
Well, I didn't. This was it was funny enough. It was Huck friend of the show, who on my behalf really sorted out some predictions for ETS, and he managed to get some of the great and good and of the world, and
the great and the good, plus those from the Finnish football show.
Well, Mark anyway, and Keke, and it's weird, sort of, looking at what they said, and I wasn't far off. Everyone thought Ilves and that was struggle, but it's funny looking back that Keke was the one who was probably nearest to the mark.
I do want to say this it is incredibly unfair that I am the only one of us that's like live broadcasting who submitted a prediction.
To be fair, I did a thing on Spirit FM at the start of the season, and while they never did call me back, they did ask for me for a prediction, and I thought it would be Kups and Ilves would struggle and Asiko would win the league. So what do I know?
Asiko winning the league was mentioned by a couple of people that you recorded on the Escape to Suomi blog post, and also Hoijiko. So they were there or thereabouts. Who was this? Juha Valtteri, J.V. Salminen on Twitter thought that the biggest disappointment for the season would be Mariehamn because their pre-season wasn't very convincing.
He's the commentator, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, then, if we're going to put the boot in, he also had PK35 as his dark horse.
I can't comment on that one because.
And let's have a look. Now, who's this character here? Mark Hayton from FC Suomi. So bottom two, VPS and Ilves. Player of the year, Roope Riski. Well, he scored a few goals, but that was based on your man crush, wasn't it, rather than footballing ability?
I'm that kind of fan. I like players that have end product. And
he also said he was your player of the year in the summary. So consistent.
Yeah, true that. And let's hope with the prizes he's winning, he gets a bit of prize money and perhaps can do something with that Barnet of his, because that's getting out of control. He won. He also won at the weekend the Kloppet, the Ashiko Kloppet Player of the Year, and there's a picture of him with I think he's wearing a fur coat, and it also looks like he's got a bird's nest on top of his head. It's
we need to get the clippers out of that.
I think he was tempted to give him a saucer of milk.
And Keke, yeah, I mean Keke did okay with some of his predictions. The most important signing of Alexei Eremenko for Asiko is notable in standing out.
I mean, I could defend that because he was very important. Because I think if Asiko hadn't have signed Eremenko, they probably would have won a couple of those first games, and they might have won the league.
Important for everyone else apart from Asiko.
Yeah. Mariehamn's best signing.
Okay. Oh, hello. Keke's woken up and he's starting to post what can only be described as graffiti on our message board. So nice to see you there, Keke. And Juspe said he also predicted Mariehamn to struggle. So not so good on there. Okay, Rich. You said before you had a few comments about the teams promoted from the lower divisions. Do you want to just run through those a bit?
I mean, I touched on Ukkinen. Obviously, IK won that, and we're playing Veikkausliiga. TPS obviously lost the playoff. Yarrow, who went down from Veikkausliiga last season, they finished 7 points adrift. There was some talk because they had a win chalked off. Also, was it a draw chalked off early in the season because of the weird foreign players rule that they had some players from the countries that were allowed, but one guy didn't know which nationality he was, so therefore was the wrong one. KTP got relegated for the second year in a row, so they'll play in Kakkonen next year, along with FC Jazz, Poddy. But yeah, in the Kakkonen, because of the way that works out, this year they went to 3 groups, regional groups, in the second division, third tier. And
how are the playoff teams selected from there, Rich?
well, the 3 regional groups, so the group winner and then the runner-up with the best record. So they had 10 teams in. So the team who finished second in either of the groups with the best record got promoted. But yeah, ended up being Honka against Oulu. Honka won that 4-3 on aggregate, and Nistan and Musa and Nistan won that game. Honka only just found out yesterday that was actually confirmed because Oulu made a somewhat speculative appeal based on the team sheet they submitted for the second leg. They said it was invalid and it was all a real technicality, but in the end, Palolito looked through it and just went, no. So yeah, so Honka are back in the second division for next season, and Nistan as well.
What can you tell anything about Nistan? Obviously, FC Honka is a name that has had success in previous years, but Nistan.
I'll be honest, not a lot.
No, I put you on the spot there.
Yeah, no, I say you know, I've seen they're popping up, and they've done quite well in the cup in the last couple of years. Not in the weird setup this year, but no, I mean, again, it's a little bit below where I've been watching, but no, I'd say look forward to seeing them in Ukon next season.
Well, if anyone listening to this knows more about Nistan and wants to put us straight, you know, the Twitter addresses, you can drop us a message and let us know, and I'll stop asking Rich questions that he hasn't prepared for, because that seems a little bit unfair. Does anyone have anything else they want to say about Veikkausliiga, or shall we start to wrap it up? Let's see if anyone's made any more comments. Oh, hello.
I'll wait for that.
There's a message from somebody whose name I can't read because it's in Arabic script of some sort, saying hi and good morning. So good morning, whoever you are. Thank you for that. And Juspe mentions that Kakkonen has Kajani derbies coming up next season.
Yeah, they haven't worked out sort of who. I don't think they've finalised the groupings for next year, but in one of the sort of central division, you've got TPV and Tampere United potentially in the same division, and FC Jazz as well. You've got basically 3 former champions.
Yeah, and they're all quite close, close by. So interesting. If we can get our gaze off of the starry heights of the top of the Veikkausliiga and the couple of divisions below.
Yeah. I actually went to a TPV game a couple of years ago. I was in Tampere at a bit of a loose end and watched them play Narpes. And they had young Mauro Severino playing for them, who's a young lad who's been in the sort of Finnish youth teams, and he had a trial at Leicester not long ago. And I've never seen such a player run so quick. He had the most ridiculous haircut I've ever seen. But him and his brother were substitutes. Both came on. He played up front, and he was ridiculously quick. And yeah, it's interesting. He's one of those players that plays in the junior teams and seems to get a lot of trials at big English clubs, although they're sort of in the academy system and probably never get heard of again.
Okay, let's wrap up there for the Veikkausliiga review. I think we should just mention to everybody the upcoming Hukijat game, which is on Saturday, 12th of November. Hopefully the podcast is out before then, so this will act as some kind of reminder that Finland are playing away in Ukraine. Kick-off at 9:45 p.m. Finnish time. So that will be hopefully a bit more interesting, Mark, if those some of those forwards get on the pitch all at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect a massive shake-up and a 7-1-2 formation this time round, as opposed to the 7-2-1.
that would be thrilling. And maybe we'll squeeze out one more FFS of 2016 in a few weeks' time. Let's see how angry Mark is after that next game.
Well, something you mentioned at the weekend, it'd be with if Finland don't win this will be the first time they've gone winless in a year for a quarter of a century.
1992.
Yeah, and at least that year they played some half-decent teams.
Yeah, Brazil and France and back when England were England.
England under Graham Taylor.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah,
I'm not sure if I said this on the last show. I probably did because it was about the national team games, but I'm just losing the will to live with international football, and part of me can't be bothered to watch the England games. I will watch the Finland game because I have a duty to all of our adoring fans out there, all 14 of you, that I will take one for the team and watch it with optimism in my heart. But I might not watch England, and that's quite a big thing to say after 40-something years of watching.
Before you make such a big commitment, I want you to think about. So I'm from Newcastle originally. So I'm a Newcastle fan who were relegated last year. I watch England and Finland, and they're both going through an incredibly rough patch. I moved to Porvoo a couple of years ago, and this season, Futura Porvoo were relegated from Kakkonen, and Achilles Porvoo were relegated from Kolmonen. So I am currently living through like a strange curse.
Jonah.
Mark, feel free never to take a liking to Ashley. You can keep your bad luck to yourself if you don't mind. Just a reminder to everybody of our three sites. So on FC Suomi, there's regular reports through the season of the Hukajat players from around the world. Well, I guess mostly Europe, and just also just to remind people to dig out the Outside Right podcast that you appeared on recently, because I thought it was quite interesting. I learned a bit more about you from listening to that than I've picked up on here as well. So if you like listening to Mark's dulcet Geordie voice, then check out Outside Right. I think it's probably the most recent episode there.
I don't get as angry.
Rich, on Escape to Suomi, the most recent thing you've got on there is the report from Mariehamn winning the league, and that's
I've actually for a change got a few bits lined up. Obviously I've got the Henry's summary of the guys' predictions. In a very weird quirk, a former colleague of mine, her brother is manager of Yarrow. So strangely, I've interviewed him, and I'll get that up at some point, and maybe I'll try and get him on the podcast at some point as maybe in the preview to next season. But it's very another small world sort of thing.
Yeah, good stuff. Good connections. You got your tentacles stretching out all over the place, Rich. Good. Good
of all the people I thought would have a relative of a Finnish football manager, it wasn't her. But yes.
And I've got my Explore Finland podcast website, and that's where we publish the Finnish football show. So you can have a look on there for the show notes for this episode, and there'll be a few links, and also the video for this that's YouTube will also be available to watch on there as well. So check it out. And the YouTube channel, feel free to subscribe to that. You'll get notified, I guess, then when we've got a new show coming along. If you search for my name, it's Mark Wiltshire, and you'll see the Finnish football show you'll see the Explore Finland logo on there, and you'll know you're in the right place. Or maybe just search for the Finnish football show, and Mark and I will do the editing bit, Mark, and try and get the podcast out within the next few days. So to everyone there that's watching us, no more new. Oh no, there are a few new comments there. Juspe would have liked to see FC Twente's Fredrik Jensen to be part of the national side. And Sam said there could be a spot for Orpeas if the PK don't get the license because of economic problems. So we're reading your comments, boys, even if we're now just reading words aloud with no real context.
Isn't that what we do every show?
And it wouldn't be the close season in Finland if a couple of clubs moved around outside of league placing. So if Oulu do end up in Ukkinen, it wouldn't surprise me. And be another derby for next season.
Hey.
But let's see what happens. I think that's time to call it a night. Thanks to everyone that's joined us live. Thanks to those of you that are listening on the podcast. And we've told you enough times where you can find us at Explore Finland, at Escape to Suomi, and at FC Suomi. So feel free to drop us a line. Until next time, where Mark rants about Hans Backer getting a Saka. That's it from the Finnish Football Show. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.